Hello and welcome to this short introduction to international universities. My name is David Hawkins. I am a director and the founder of the University Guys. We are independent educational consultants specializing in helping students apply to universities all over the world. The focus of this talk is going to be based on how international universities differ from those you find in the United Kingdom. Now, lots of students from UK schools are now applying to international universities. This is an overview of where the students that we worked with in the class of 2023 gained offers, students from the UK going to countries around the world, and international students wanting to come here. So it's an increasingly popular thing that students are choosing to do. However, what we've got to understand is that international universities will not work on the same basis as those in the UK. They are different. Depending on the country and the system you're applying to, we have to understand that it's not like picking up a British university and putting it down in a different country. There are different ways in which a university experience is delivered. For example, the process by which students will build their university shortlist will necessarily need to work differently. What you will study will likely be a little bit different or very different. How you assess the quality of a university will potentially be very different. And then finally, how you go about making your applications will be different. So let's delve into these. How you think about choosing a university. Now, in the UK, we have two bits of information that allow us pretty quickly to narrow down our university shortlist. The first bit is your predicted grades, the grades in A-levels, IB, BTEC, etc., that you're predicted to get when you finish school. The second bit is the course you want to study, whether that's business or mechanical engineering or French. Now, those two bits come together, and there are all sorts of wonderful tools and websites out there to allow you to build your shortlist. The problem is that's only really the way it works in the UK. You can't go onto websites of universities in other parts of the world and necessarily find A-level or IB or BTEC entry requirements in the same way as we do on ucas.com. Nor really can you find what course you're applying for at universities where their curriculum doesn't work that way. So you're going to have to think about this in a very different way. And if I'm being honest, you're going to have to invest much more time in this process of building a shortlist. And I'll use the United States as the first example of that. When we go to university in the United States, in most cases, you're not actually applying for a subject. I've got NYU, Dartmouth College, and the University of Michigan here. And those are universities which offer very different experiences. Your academics are going to be broad. You won't be applying them to just study a medieval language or to just study history or to just study maths. You will get a much broader curriculum. But as well as that, you're getting the culture of that university. Being a student in downtown Manhattan is a very different experience from in rural New Hampshire or in this big public flagship university like the University of Michigan. That stadium there is absolutely vast. And so you're going to have to think about different things, not just what course do I want to study, but what is this full experience I want to be part of? This is what a US university is going to select you for. So you've got to understand it when you're choosing your options. And there are other things that come into this as well. Here in the UK, most of our universities are comprehensive. That means they teach a wide range of subjects. So you can go to places like Durham or UCL or Edinburgh, and there'll be engineers and artists, there'll be historians and mathematicians, there'll be literature students and chemists. And so that experience is very undergraduate focused. Loads of students coming straight out of high school with a social life and an accommodation that's designed for them. Here in the UK, our specialised universities typically are only art, drama, music schools, but the rest of the world has lots of specialised institutions. For example, the photo here of Caltech. And there are loads of places around the world that will only teach a narrow subject area. They might only teach business or only teach automotive engineering or only teach car mechanics or only teach sport. Now, those may be institutions where the focus of their education, like at Caltech, is much more on postgraduates. People who've already done one degree, then doing their master's degree, their PhD, or indeed their own research. And that's going to change what the social life and the accommodation will feel like. The joke from students at Caltech is that being an undergraduate at Caltech is similar to being a wart on a rhinoceros. You exist, but nobody's paying you much attention. Just get a sense of how the culture of a university will be different. In this, we've also got to understand that not every country's universities are actually delivering a residential experience. And some of this data here from a Higher Education Policy Institute report from a few years back shows this, that actually in the UK, we have a very high watermark of students going away from home to university. But in other parts of the world, that is not the case, particularly in continental Europe, where the public universities there very often don't even provide any dorms or halls of residence. They believe their job is to deliver teaching and assessment, but the rest of it is for you to figure out on your own. So you might have to make an active choice to want to go to somewhere like High Point University here in North Carolina, where I'm actually going to get that residential university experience, rather than just assuming it comes everywhere. And then in this shortlisting the university process, you're going to also have the big conversation about money. If you are relying on your UK student loan to fund your studies, then unfortunately that's not portable outside the UK. So what will you be relying on? Well, you might have a passport or residency that allows you to fund university in another country. So for example, if you have a French passport, you can use it to study cheaply at universities in Quebec, in Canada, such as Bishop's University you see here, which teaches in English, or you might have an EU passport that brings the cost of some EU public universities much lower. Now, if you don't have that and you're also not able to pay the full international fees in certain places, then you might need to rely on money from universities. That could be need-based aid, where a university looks at your family's financial circumstances and decides how much they believe is fair to charge you. That, for example, is what the Ivy League universities do. Or it might be a merit scholarship, money that you get for being really good in the eyes of that specific university. Now, this is a really important thing to get right before you delve into your international university process. I encourage you to have this conversation with whoever it is who funds your life right now. Now, the second thing that's going to be different is how your studies will work. And again, it's not going to be the same. Across the world, we see a range of different curriculum structures where different universities in different countries will have a different academic process. There are lots of places like the UK which offer a single or joint honours degree, where you go to university to just study that one or those two closely related subjects. But that's not the same everywhere. And you can see, particularly when we look at the United States, with a system that's called the liberal arts and sciences, whereby you are doing a range of different things. When you've got students who are doing a more broad academic profile. For example, your major is not normally something that you would pick until your second year, and it's probably only making a third of your course over 4 years. On top of the major, you might have a capstone, like a thesis. You're also going to have electives, and those could potentially come together into a minor, which would be another third of what you would study. But the bit that's important to understand in the US liberal arts and sciences is that you're also going to have this core or general education, where the university is going to force you to study a range of subjects. And that typically means you're going to still be doing maths, sciences, foreign languages, literature, the humanities, the social sciences, the arts, and even PE. And that's something that's very different from what we're used to in the UK. You would go into MIT, you'll still be doing PE, the arts, humanities, foreign language. So you've got to really understand it's a very different academic experience. And within the United States, it's going to be different between different universities. What you would do at MIT is not the same as you would study in Brown's open curriculum. It's not the same as you would study in Columbia's very traditional fixed curriculum, nor in places like the engineering school at Cornell, more specialized, or the business school at UPenn, more specialized. And so you've got to really delve into the nuance. Many students applying from the UK to the US miss this and end up applying to places with completely different curriculums and almost self-sabotage their applications because they're really trying to make themselves be considered for almost opposite academic experiences. So your studies will be very different. We have that halfway house between the single honours and the liberal arts and sciences that we find in places like Canada, Hong Kong, Australia, where you're applying into a faculty or a program. So rather than having to study everything, you might just be studying all the arts and humanities, or all the commerce, or all the engineering, or all the sciences. So you can have a greater breadth, but around the theme of what you want to study, and you're not necessarily being forced into studying things outside of where your focus is. We're increasingly also seeing interdisciplinary degrees where we've got a theme or a question on which other elements are hung. For example, things like climate change, which involves environmental science, but also the law, politics, economics will need to all come into it. Or development studies, understanding how to help countries lift their people out of poverty. Again, that's going to bring in lots of different subjects. So universities that are teaching in these kind of ways. And if we head out to all the other different parts of the world, we'll find the educational cultures of those countries. For example, here, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology will respond to the cultures at that place. We also have situations where actually the universities will be teaching you in different ways depending on where they physically are as you move around the world. The World Bachelor in Business, for example, is a program where students will go to 3 different continents over the course of a 4-year business degree. We have options where you would split your time between 2 universities in 2 countries, like Trinity College Dublin in Ireland and Columbia in New York, Sciences Po in France, and University of California, Berkeley. So loads of different options there as well. I also mentioned at this point, if you are looking to the Southern Hemisphere, Australia and New Zealand, that their academic year is flipped. So if you were looking to study in those places, bear in mind, you're likely going to have a little mini gap year because their academic year will start in the February after you finish your school leaving exams. So loads of different pathways out there, loads of different things out there for students. The third of my 4 points is quality. How do we assess whether a university is good? Well, we've got to understand relative scale. We're looking at somewhere like America with 4.3 million students graduating from high schools each year. It's not surprising that for the 2,000 or so offers Harvard was looking to make in 2022 entry, 8,000 Americans applied for them having not dropped a mark in high school. That's like having straight 9s in year 10, straight 9s in year 11, straight A stars in year 12, straight A stars in year 13. It's a pretty high bar, but it's a much bigger place. And therefore, compared to places like Oxford and Cambridge, you're going to find very few students are able to get into the top American universities because the competition is so much higher. But if we flip that round and look to somewhere much smaller, like the Republic of Ireland, you'll find many fewer universities, and therefore the competition doesn't necessarily work in the same way. So where's good has to be assessed by actually what is the competition within each country for places at that university. If we're looking at continental Europe, we also have to understand that selection is not really a thing at all. These universities, for example, the KU Leuven that you see here, will typically determine students' admissibility based on eligibility. Do you meet our minimum qualifications to get in? If you do, you can start. And we won't select you into year 1, but we will select you from year 1 into year 2, selection after the gate. This university would deny a student for business if they had 3 A stars, but one of them wasn't maths, and they would admit a student for business with 3 Cs if they did have maths. It's about being eligible, not necessarily having the highest grades. And then if we come back to those specialist universities, what you'll find is your aptitude for that specialism, it's what gets you in. You wouldn't expect a music school in the UK to not audition a student. Well, then if it's a specialized university in other part of the world, they will want to audition you for the specialism. This university here is the École Hôtelière de Lausanne in Switzerland. It's one of the world's best hotel management universities. And so their selection procedure involves a team building activity because that's the sort of thing you have to have an aptitude for in their area of specialism. So very different ways it works. And then the last part of the process is then how you would go about the application. These are not replacing your 5 on UCAS and they're not on UCAS, but they are going to involve different application systems. There will be some places which are all on one system, other countries where different universities will be on different systems, and many universities will also expect you to apply to the universities directly. So you're going to have to understand that everything is different. The earlier you get out there and figuring out the deadlines, some may be earlier than the UK, some may be later, you'll understand that every process will work differently. You'll have to do different things, provide different information, as indeed will your school. Particularly in that, you're going to find the writing is different. You will be unlikely to be sending your UCAS statements to all the universities you're applying to. There'll be different types of essays. You might have to send a CV. You might have individual questions for each university. There is no standard process. Now, that was a very quick overview, but hopefully it's given you some themes to start delving into. If you would like to know a little bit more, please visit our website, theuniversityguys.com. We will offer a 3-step process to help you explore, prepare, and then apply to international universities. And please contact me via david@theuniversityguys.com if I can help in any way. Thank you very much.